game. 17 more, that'll get more. Cygnar. Doesn't everybody?
Hi everyone, it's Steve here. I've got a tournament report for you. I'm actually going to report all 4 games that I played, all in this one video. Mainly because I was so bad at taking photos that I can't give full details on each of the games, and I thought it would actually be a bit more useful just to try and just summarise the key plays in each game and explain what happened in more general terms. So I went to AdventureCon in North Germany in Hamburg, which was quite an interesting little convention. There was a lot going on, but the main thing I was interested in was the Warmachine tournament, and it was a pretty good tournament. It was nice and friendly, and it was well organised. The average age was pretty high. I think virtually everyone was over 30. Maybe 1 or 2 guys were sort of in their late 20s. So it really seems like in North Germany the Warmachine scene is really dominated by sort of slightly older players. And it was a pretty high-level tournament. Quite a lot of the players there were all ranked in the top 100 for Germany, and on the T3 website. So there's a tabletop tournament website where these tournaments get organised, and everyone who's registered there gets a ranking. I rank somewhere near 400 or something like that at the moment, so I'm pretty bad. But yeah, almost everyone there was ranked in the top 100. I think there was maybe 3 or 4 other guys who were between the top 100 and me. So I was definitely the lowest ranked player there, but it was only my second tournament, so I wasn't too worried about that. In fact, one of the players was actually the top ranked player, number 1 on that T3 website, which is quite interesting. And I also got drawn against him my 3rd game, so you'll find out how that went. Now, I spent a lot of time the previous week getting my army up to a minimum standard to get painted. So the armies weren't fully painted, but I was there with my Maddox and Nemo 3 lists, and they were both in a position to play and get a little dice bonus on the starting roll, based on the fact that they all had a minimum of all of their base coats on. So I brought, as I said, Maddox and Nemo with me. We didn't get list locked in this tournament, so I ended up only playing Maddox. So she's quite a simple caster to play. There's not much stuff to forget. And in the first couple of games of the tournament, I felt like it was a good place to start. I also felt like it was the correct drop for all of the opponents that I played against. I never felt like I lacked any shooting, which is what the Nemo 3 list is all about. So I'll tell you what my Maddox list is. So it's actually a fairly standard Maddox list, and I think it's the same list I played in the last bat rep against Leon. So it's just Maddox with a Squire and an Ironclad and a Stormclad in their battle group. It's Journeyman Warcaster with a Firefly, 2 full units of Stormlancers with Lattimore, Stormblade Captain, and a unit of Stormblade Infantry with the CA and 2 weapon attachments. So you can see that all on the screen right there. It's a very large model count list, and it's pretty hard hitting on the alpha. But the problem is getting the alpha. So her little onslaught spell really helps with Pathfinder on charges, makes a massive difference. She's pretty good at fueling a couple of jacks, and yeah, because of her feat, it's just a crazy powerful charge. And of course in Storm Division the Stormblades get a pre-move before the game starts, which really helps them get up the field. And actually in this tournament, the Stormblades felt like they did quite a lot, so it's certainly a unit that I'll be going back to later. Now, once I'd got to the tournament and got assigned my first game, I found out that it was going to be Death Clock for the whole tournament, which I wasn't quite prepared for. But it worked out fine in the end, but it just meant there was quite a lot of extra pressure on me, especially with so many models, and the lack of experience that I got. Although I try and get a game in once a week, it's still not enough practice to get really competitive. So yeah, it was Death Clock, and because of that extra level of stress, I didn't pay so much attention to taking a photo at the end of every round. So there's quite a few photos missing from all 4 games, but I think there's enough photos to get the general illustration across of what happened in each game. So the first game I got drawn against Skorne. Oh yeah, it's probably worth mentioning that almost half the players in the tournament were bringing Skorne, because the errata came out quite recently, so I think they were all fairly keen to play something different. And also Skorne's at a bit of an advantage because they're so their faction is so broad and they have so many viable casters. It's very difficult to prepare for that enemy because you really have no idea what your opponent's going to be bringing. So although I knew there was tons of Skorne going to be at the tournament, I read a bit about Makeda 1, and then all the rest was just sort of skimming very common units because I could really come up against any Warcaster. So in the first Skorne game, I got drawn up against Makeda 2. It was a double Ferox list, 2 units of Ferox. I think I don't have the full list, but I think they also had the Ferox solo. They also had Moloch Khan and the Titan Gladiator and an Archidon, and then there was the usual backup of, I think, Pain Givers, Beast Handlers, and that kind of thing. And I got first go, so we all played the pit, the one with the circle in the middle. I'm going to forget the names of all of the other scenarios before the end of this, but this one I remember it's the pit. And yeah, I got the first turn, so I set up for a nice broad deployment, trying not to give away the fact that I'm actually going to head towards the centre. Got a couple of hills, got a forest on the left, got a bit of water on the right. The water's not too much of a problem because I can charge through it. There's a wall, it's also not going to stop me very much. So yeah, so the first turn was really just running up, getting in position. You can see I've got my front line of Storm Lancers there. They're all buffed up with the spells, got all my upkeeps up. Got a second line of Storm Blades. Because of their advanced move, they can keep up with the Storm Lancers on that first turn, which is pretty important. And then everyone else is... yeah, I've got Stormclad up on the hill there. The second line of Storm Lancers slightly skewed over to the right, just because of space, because it looked like I'd be able to get charge lines up that way. And Maddox is, of course, hanging back, nice and far. My opponent came up, jammed with a few of his Ferox, just to stop me from getting the alpha off, I guess. The rest of the Ferox are moved up and relatively well protected. He's got his 2 heavies, Moloch Khan and the Titan, in the centre there. He's got his Archidon right over on the left. The Archidon's super fast, so it really looked like he was looking to flank me and trying to scare me, get in on Maddox there. I wasn't too worried about that because of the Stormclads there to do something about that. So I don't believe he got any attacks off, so I don't think any damage was done. So it was really a task. I knew I was going to alpha on my second turn. I was going to be feating, so it was really just a task of working out the best way to engage the right number of models. I knew I wanted to get my Storm Lancers right up into his Ferox, and I felt like I could probably take down one of his heavies in the centre there, either the Titan or Moloch Khan. And yeah, I felt like I could remove most of his cavalry, and I felt like I'd be in a pretty good position after that. So that's what I did, and that looks like this. So you can see here I really ate into his army quite a lot. The repositions on the Storm Lancers really let me move around and engage the second line of guys. You can see that the Stormclad ran over to try and give the Archidon a bit of a problem. Something to think about on that side, because the Stormclad wouldn't have been able to run and engage in the centre anyway. There wasn't enough space or any lines there. The Ironclad swung across and heading over towards to put more pressure on that Archidon as well. Maddox is sitting up on the hill now. And yeah, so I feated, took out loads of Ferox, although it was pretty difficult because he kept on keeping them alive, because Makeda 2 can just spend fury to stop guys from dying, which is really annoying. Luckily he didn't have too much fury, so he had to make some tough decisions about who would stay alive and who would die. If he hadn't been doing that, I think it would have done a way more damage. So it's a really, really nice defensive ability, that one. And then right in the centre I had the choice of trying to take down the Titan Gladiator or Moloch Khan. So I was able to get 3 Storm Lancers onto one of them and 2 onto the other one. And because the Titan Gladiator had the lower defence, the armour wasn't too much of a problem, so I decided to concentrate on the Gladiator and then do some damage to Moloch Khan. And I don't have that much experience against hordes, and the thing about hordes heavies is that you have to kill them. If you're going to damage them, you have to kill them, because otherwise they can just heal up really easily on their turn, and then they just work full power. So it's like having mechanics in your Warmachine list, but having mechanics like each heavy having his own mechanic attached to him, so he can just heal up. It's crazy. So although I did some significant damage to Moloch Khan, he was still working at full blast, no problem at all. So my opponent later said that after this he was ready to give up, because I did so much damage to him on his first time. I'm so far over towards the board. I'm engaging his Warcaster with 2 of my cavalry. So it felt good, and so we carried on, and he replied. So what he was doing was, over on the left, the Archidon and the Stormclad, he was really tying up the Stormclad by managing to... He's got, I think, sustained attack special ability, which allows him to throw. So he was really, the whole time on the left there, he was really keeping my Stormclad down. Stormclad kept on having to spend focus to get up, couldn't charge. So yeah, it was really the Stormclad who really wanted to get in and do some damage to the more tough models, was just really being kept occupied there. As you can see, he completely removed all of my Storm Lancers. I guess this picture is after my turn following that, because there's no Ferox left at all. So I guess that he removed all of my Storm Lancers, like not one single cavalry model left on the table. And then I followed up by removing all of his Ferox. And then he was just really stopping me from scoring in the centre of the board. At this point, it probably would have been wise for me to get Maddox over onto my own flag, just to pressure on Scenario. But I was too scared of the Archidon coming over and doing something nasty to her, so I stayed on the hill. And yeah, so he was just occupying the centre there just with a couple of dudes. And to be honest, I wasn't paying much attention to the Scenario, which I probably should have been doing after that strong first turn. I probably could have got Maddox up onto the hill that's inside the circle there, and could have been scoring, and probably could have closed out the game pretty quickly. But I think my inexperience shone through. I was enjoying beating him up so much that I didn't really think about it too much. And then what happened was, as you can see on the left, the Archidon's still tying up the Stormclad, still kept on throwing him into forests. Maddox is sitting on the hill and camping because I'm scared of getting assassinated. And then Moloch Khan was still alive, kept him, I think he had 1 box left at one point. He kept on healing him up, getting him up to full strength, and then he was just a lawnmower, just cleaning up my models across the centre of the board, and kept on occupying that zone, preventing me from scoring, but at the same time just chewing up my models all the way through. And eventually that's how the game ended. So Moloch Khan really probably single-handedly killed more or less half my army, and I just didn't have the models left to contest the centre. He got his, I didn't have anything left for an assassination, and he managed to get his Warcaster up, his Warlock up into the zone, and managed to lock the game down on Scenario. So yeah, so that was a loss for me, but I had a lot of fun. It was pretty stressful because I was thinking about the clock quite a lot, because I had so many models on the board. And yeah, like I said, I think my lack of experience resulted in me not putting any pressure on Scenario, and I probably could have closed the game out quick enough that he wouldn't have been able to recover. Also, in the future, if I get the choice between the Titan Gladiator and Moloch Khan, then I will definitely be removing Moloch Khan, just because he can really chew up infantry. I mean, he's not quite so dangerous against heavies, although he can do work against heavies, but he's really good at clearing out zones. So yeah, so that was the first game. Then moving on to the second game, I drew against Trolls. I think there was a couple of Troll players in the tournament. And this was a Jarl list, or Jarl, don't know how you pronounce it. He had loads of pig bushwhackers, 2 full units of those with all their attachments and everything. He also had Dozer and Smig in his battle group. He also had another Troll heavy, I can't remember what it was, and a Troll light as well, both of the close combat variations. And he had the Dunian Knots, I think, the support magic guys, and a Creel Stone, of course, because he's Trolls. And he also had 1 Gremlin swarm, which was quite interesting. Gremlins are pretty nasty at the moment because they are incorporeal and their offensive capabilities don't depend on them actually making an attack. So they never have to become incorporeal to become dangerous. They just need to get up to one of your warjacks and they can make it do nasty things. So, gremlins are pretty popular at the moment, and I think it's quite a nice way to fill up some points there. So I took Maddox again. I believe I got first turn again. So here's the first turn. So I took a photo after everyone had made their first turn moves, so after the first round. So you can see I did a much more spread out deployment here. I knew that his feat was a smoke feat. I think he's already feated at this point. So when so I moved everything up and he moved everything up. His pigs on the right, his bushwhackers, took out almost my entire unit of Stormlancers there on the right. I don't think I had anything up on them to stop them from getting killed. Yeah, I had Dauntless Resolve on the Stormblades there, which actually probably was a bit pointless because they were so far away from the bushwhackers. So one side of my army was covered, the left flank is covered by that forest, which made it difficult for him to see through with the bushwhackers. But yeah, those combined ranged attacks on the bushwhackers on the right took out my unprotected Stormlancers. So I wasn't expecting that, certainly. And then he feated and got a smoke wall up, which prevented me from charging in and doing some damage. So I had to wait it out. I wasn't allowed to charge in, but I managed to put in a couple of Stormlancers into his smoke wall and just do some electroleaps off the back of them to take out a couple of the pigs. Didn't really do much at all, actually, and then sort of tried to fall back a bit just so that I knew that his heavies couldn't get to me, because I wasn't too worried about getting charged by the bushwhackers. I don't think they're too hot in close combat, but I was definitely worried about his heavies getting in to charge me. I think they can boost their heavies up to pretty high levels, which would make them pretty dangerous for my heavies. So yeah, waiting out the turn, just waiting for his next strike. So this next photo, I believe that would be after the second round. So he's had a go and I've had a go. So yeah, he completely removed my last Stormlance on the right. But I was able to, before that, I was able to charge in, and with my right hand, Lattimore, Firefly shooting, and the last Stormlance, I was able to charge in and remove all of those pigs. Almost all of them, there's a couple left, but certainly remove anyone that was dangerous. The Stormblades on the pigs on the left were able to get up into the forest and take some shots. I think they took out one of my Stormlancers, but then the Stormblades moved in and just killed them pretty handily because of the Pathfinder, the onslaught that Maddox has got. It's really, really handy when you've got lots of terrain on the table. And then, so there's lots of dead pigs, and then I just got a couple of Stormlancers up into the middle just to block charge lanes for Dozer and Smig. I didn't want them getting through. Also he managed to get his Gremlin Swarm up into base contact with my Stormclad, but the only magic weapons I got in this list were on Maddox, and Maddox was able to just walk up to them and hit them with her magic sword, because Incorporeal doesn't like getting hit by magic attacks. And then I got Maddox into base contact with a flag. So I started scoring some points. Got my Storm on the right. I've got my Jacks blocking the charge lanes for his couple of trolls. They are quite dangerous, but they're quite a long way away as well. So mainly worried about his light troll there. I don't know what it's called. Yeah, so I've started scoring, and he's not really anywhere near scoring. So that was quite important. So the game wore on. It was very much an attrition game, and on the right he did charge my Stormclad with the light troll, and I think pretty importantly for this game he completely fluffed his rolls. I think he didn't hit him. He maybe hit him once, or he hit him twice and only damaged him once, or did some very little damage on one of the things. So the Stormclad is corroded, but he doesn't really care too much about corrosion. And then the Stormclad was able to hit back and obviously completely destroy him on that next turn. Obviously that did prevent him the Stormclad from charging the heavy troll there on the right, which was kind of annoying. The Ironclad got in, but I think the Ironclad was pretty damaged at this point, so it didn't do too much damage. But again, I'm worried about that heavy troll on the right there charging through and disrupting my plans to win on scenario with Maddox down here on the right. Then on the left, he charged in Dozer and Smig up behind the forest to try and take over the left flank. But I don't think he realised the charge lanes that were available to me on the for the Stormblades, and this was of course my feet turn. So the Stormblades managed to take down, I think only 3 Stormblades managed to, and the remaining Stormlance managed to take him down without too much of a problem. I think only 2 of the Stormblades were able to attack actually before he went down. So yeah, so the attrition looks pretty good for me. I've feated, so I might have some problems taking down his remaining heavy, but he needs to start using models to contest on scenario, otherwise he's going to have some problems. But the main reason he's going to have problems is because we were running out of time. I think I had about 8 minutes left on the clock, and his final turn he only had about 2 minutes left, so he was really just trying to get a model within 4 inches of the flag on the left every turn and trying to get someone down to contest the right hand flag. But I was able to, on my turn, I was able to keep guys away from the right hand flag. Left hand flag I didn't have so much success with, but I was up to 4 points, and yeah, he only had 2 minutes for his last turn, and he ran out of time. So although he may have been able to win on attrition just from me being forced on my positions because of trying to go for scenario, the game went on for so long that he ran out of time. So that was it. So it was a pretty tough game for me as another very experienced player, and it was a very interesting game. I don't think I've played against. No, I haven't played against trolls before. So I did feel like his feat was excellent. Really good for preventing my alpha because I can't charge through smoke, and yeah, those pygmies were very dangerous. He was able to keep me away from them with the smoke, so it was an excellent combination. I should have been able to take them down very easily, but because I wasn't able to charge them, that really gave me problems. Moving on to the next game. Now this was another game against Skorne, and this was against the top ranked player on the T3 website. Very nice guy. It was a good fun game, but I wasn't expecting to win. So I was able to relax a little bit, which was quite nice actually. So you can see the setup here. So he's got Rasheth with Venerator spam, so loads and loads and loads of models, and it's a shooty list. And one of the key things about Rasheth is he can use any of his models as an arc node, so he can arc spells across. The models then die straight afterwards, but it's a super powerful ability. He's got a pretty nice nuke spell, so that's really nice. And yeah, as I said, loads of Venerators, so lots of cheap infantry. They were quite shooty, and I had a lot of infantry, so that was quite interesting. I went with Maddox again. I didn't feel like Nemo had any particular advantage over Maddox. I'd already practiced twice with her that day, so I felt like I wasn't making any big mistakes with her, so I stick with Maddox. Now, because this guy's a very high-level player, he knew exactly what I was doing, so I didn't really have any idea about his list, although he was very kind enough to explain everything to me. At that point in the day, none of the information was really staying in my head anymore, but he knew my list inside out. He'd obviously, as a competitive player, he'd obviously prepared himself to come up against exactly this sort of list. Cygnar with 2 units of Stormlances. So he actually, just from his knowledge of the game, he knew my unit cards and stats better than I did. So yeah, it was quite an interesting game, and it was interesting to see the level gap between an international level player and what I would call an improver such as myself. He managed to get first turn, which was actually pretty important in this game. It allowed him to get a bit of a distance up the board so that I would have to move into his attack range on my turn. I moved my Stormblades up. They got their advanced move. Obviously I'm concentrating on the right hand flank here, so that was my plan. Although if I had had a bit of knowledge of the Rasheth and his antics, I probably would have played a little bit different. So he had first turn, and as you can see, he moved up everything, spread it all out quite nicely. which didn't look too scary to me, but the main thing he did do was he ran up a couple of his guys on the right and cast, using them as Archnose, cast his nuke spell onto my advanced Stormblades there, and basically wiped out the entire unit before the game had even started. Turn 1, that's the sort of thing that you only fall for once, but that was really devastating for me. It really put me on the back foot psychologically. I felt like I'd already lost at that point. I don't mind saying, against a sort of this sort of level player, then that's kind of a decisive move there in turn 1. So that was that. So my turn. So I made a couple of mistakes here, I think. So I couldn't. He was obviously very careful to keep his guys out of my running range, so I couldn't just run up and engage. Obviously, that puts him outside of charge range. I guess what I could have done is possibly done a assault, which would have allowed me a couple of moves. Instead, what I did was took out his a couple of guys. No, did I even make any attacks on this game, on this round? I don't think I did, actually. So what I tried to do was just get my Storm Lancers, run them up into position to just get ready to absorb whatever he can throw at me on his next turn. So I've got the buffs up. Got the spells up on them. Maddox is here hiding behind the forest, quite a nice safe spot, with her Jax on either side of her, just protecting her. Hopefully if anyone charges my Storm Lancers, then Jax will be able to countercharge those on the following turn. Got the remaining 2 Stormblades sitting in the trench, as if that's going to help them. And yeah, on the left hand side you can see I've got my Storm Lancers sitting up on the hill, just to give them a little defense bonus, which is quite nice, like a +2 defense puts them up to defense 15, and then they got Dauntless Resolve on them as well, which gives them tough and +3 armor. Quite a nice spell, really. So yeah, I'm pretty well spread out, and I think that was a big mistake, actually. So what I should have done is probably done a refuse flank, so he's very well spread out across the entire board, so I probably should have taken advantage of that and moved all of my guys over onto the right. So not having the Storm Lancers on the left on that hill, but having them far over on the right here. And that would allow me to absorb some of his shooting and then do a huge counter charge and really wipe out a lot of his stuff on the right. But in the end, he easily managed to... Well, it wasn't easy, but he definitely managed to take out all of the Storm Lancers on the left off the hill with a combination of shooting and spells and various different things. He didn't do so well on the right-hand side. I think my guys were a little bit further away range-wise, which helped a lot. So it looks like I've lost one of my ponies over that side. But apart from that, he did a sort of a slow advance, made sure he was taking care of the scenario on his left-hand side there, on my left-hand side there. So my next turn, I did countercharge with the ponies on the right and did plenty of damage. That was very satisfying. I made some space for them with some shooting from the Firefly and the Storm Blades. Stormblade Captain was there as well. The Ironclad was able to rush in. Stormclad only managed to advance up and take a couple of shots. Stormclad's got -2 armor at the moment because of blood magic. So yeah, so it was fairly satisfying on the right and completely ineffectual on the left. All I could do was get the Ironclad up there just to sit in the way. So I'm already kind of 2 whole units down at this point. Although I've done some damage to him, he's still pretty decent fighting force. So at this point I realised that that if I can get into melee with him, then he really can't do anything to me. So it was obviously too late at this point, but I realised that as long as I end my turn with my guys in melee with his guys, then he can't shoot me. And that would have made a huge difference to have realised that earlier. It also would have been nice here on the right to have both units of Storm Lancers there, just to double the impact that was available there. Maybe tie up one of his heavies, maybe feet. So I didn't actually, I don't think I bothered to feet at all in this game because all of his guys were so low armour it didn't make any difference. And I never got the opportunity to attack his heavies anyway. So both of my heavies are there threatening his caster, which I think against my usual opponents would have probably worried them a little bit, but he didn't seem too concerned at all with that. And Maddox is right over on the right there, in my zone, towing into my zone, and with inside the trench there, which kind of guarantees him not winning immediately on scenario. yeah, so the following turn, he took care of both of my heavies, unfortunately. He had some pretty decent shooting combined with a couple of heavies. Although I was trying to tie them up in melee, he was able to free them up and take some shots. My Stormlancers on the right still were doing pretty well, so as I said, because I was sitting in melee with most of his guys, wasn't an awful lot he could do about them. So yeah, I think if I got to play this game again, it would play out quite differently. Although even for a little bit think I would win, but still, it was quite interesting. And he's got Rasheth in his zone inside a trench there, so he's starting to look good on scenario on his side as well. At this point, there's not much left on the table that I can do, so moving forward, you can see that just about see up on the top there that the Stormlancers just finished sort of clearing up on that side. But the rest of my army is looking pretty unhealthy, and I believe he managed to take down Maddox with a spell through an arc node. He made sure that he always had one model sitting with a toe into my zone, just to make sure I couldn't possibly win on scenario before he got the chance to assassinate. And that was it, really. So it was. I made a few mistakes. I wasn't really sort of in a positive mood anyway, so I wasn't trying to win. I was just trying to enjoy it, really. And I certainly did enjoy it. It was a great fun game. It was very brutal, and it was very nice to see some infantry on the table. In fact, that whole this whole tournament has been fairly infantry heavy, which is quite unusual at the moment, I think, in the general meta. But here in North Germany, Kriegs are very strong. Hordes are doing quite well. Yeah, so I don't think the usual meta trends at the moment are really reflected in our national meta here in Germany. But yeah, it was interesting to see an infantry list own a Stormlance list. I don't think Stormlances are quite as overpowered as everyone thinks. I think any good player worth his salt really knows how to handle them and has lists that have easy answers to Stormlancers. Although I didn't play ideally, I think my Stormlancers still wouldn't have been an auto win against most of these lists. So moving on to the final game, I'm pretty tired at this point in the day. Pretty ready to finish. I did want to make sure I played all of the games, but I certainly wasn't at my peak. Not making any excuses, but all of my opponents were very high level and played excellently. So yeah, so moving into this game, this was Wormwood. Unfortunately, I just stuck with Maddox because I really couldn't be bothered to risk making any mistakes with Nemo. Certainly against Roomwood and all his forest antics, I didn't really think that I would have much an advantage with my shooting with Nemo. And again, I got this Pathfinder spell, so that would have helped out with Maddox. So I went for Maddox again. So he's got Wormwood, he's got two of the stones with the mannequins straight up front. You can see those on this picture here. He had Getorix on there and a couple of other wolves. So lots of heavies. And then really key, he had a couple of walled weirds, which are circle light beasts. And they were he was very kind to explain to me very carefully what they did. I think he knew what my plan was going to be already, even though I didn't have to tell him anything. But he very carefully explained to me that they get extra dice against models. They have purgation, so they get extra dice against models with upkeeps on them. And yeah, unfortunately that information didn't really go into my brain. At this point in the day, I wasn't really ready to learn anything new. So anyway, so I got the first turn. He's obviously got all his mannequins up front there. I felt like being quite aggressive, so I ran up. It was a fairly loose formation this time. It didn't feel like he had an awful lot of shooting, so I wasn't too worried about going up in a nice brick there. But he told me that he had a spell that is a pretty powerful one against the infantry, so don't group them up on the hill. So what I did was I did group them up on the hill, which was fine, but I also had their mini feat up, including the armour spell from Maddox. So they're up at armour 21, so I didn't feel too bad that a power 12 could do too much against them. And yeah, so I just ran up, really, and I didn't really know what to expect. I knew what Wormwood's feat would do, but for some reason I felt like my Pathfinder spell was a good answer to that. So here's his first move. Yeah, got some mannequins up there, so it's quite often the case that against Storm Lancers that people put up a few cheap models just to offer them up, just to stop people from getting charges in with their whole units. So I think that's quite useful against Storm Lancers, is to do something like that. So he got his mannequins up there. I don't think there was much in the way of damage on this turn. To me, it felt like he was really leaning back as being quite really passive on this turn. He had some of these little witch characters at the back there, and he was just using those purely to generate fury for Wormwood. So Wormwood collects souls, and he was just killing his own guys just to give Wormwood souls that put him up to 10 fury on his turn. So this is what I did. So I was pretty aggressive with one unit of Storm Lancers. Got them up there. I wanted to give his Woldweird something to worry about. What I didn't realise was they have gunfighter, so that they don't really care if you're engaging them or not. They can still shoot you. And then now that my mini feat was already used up, I spread out the Stormblades quite heavily to really get them to reduce the chance of getting zapped with that AoE that pushes you in and then hits you with power 12s. Although they've got tough on them, they're now down to armor 18, so a power 12 can do some damage. Then the other unit of Storm Lancers stayed well back. So my idea was that Stormblades would absorb any sort of charge that he could make. As you can see, I'm really close to Wormwood at this point. And then I'd be able to feat after that, and my Lancers would be able to charge in. So what he did, I think my next slide skips a turn, but sticking with this one, what he did was the Storm Lancers that I charged into jam, he took them down no problem at all with his Woldweirds. They both got a couple of shots each, and they can boost to damage, and they have this purgation. So because I had Arcane Shield up on those guys, he had no problem wiping those out whatsoever. He didn't need to bring his heavies forward at all. His mannequins and standing stones and spells managed to take out a huge chunk of my Stormblades, and he was able to move the Wormwood up and feat with none of my guys within his feat range. Everyone was outside of the 5-inch charge range, so my Pathfinder spell was actually completely useless. So this guy, he knew what he was doing against Cygnar, and he knew that his feat would work against my army. So that was quite interesting. So on this slide you can see that this was my answer to his. So he's already got his three heavies up on the front line here, and they're quite dangerous. And I was a bit worried about losing. I still hadn't feated at this point, so my plan was I couldn't get any charges off onto any of his army. So my plan was to offer up my heavies, all of my jacks to his heavies, in the hope that he would then be able to countercharge. That I would then be able to countercharge with my Stormblades and stop remaining Storm Lancers with my feet up. So that was the plan. And so he moved in. He was able to easily take out all of my jacks with his heavies, no problem at all. And then I did it. Getorix was quite far forward, so that's exactly what I did. It was what I planned. Managed to get my Stormblades and Storm Lancers in there. Took down Getorix. Unfortunately, his two heavies on the right, I couldn't quite get enough guys to them to completely kill them. And as I said before, if it's a Horde's heavy and you don't completely kill him, then you may as well not bother attacking him at all, because he'll just be up to full effectiveness on the next turn anyway. So at this point I felt like he had some pretty good answers to what I had on the table. I felt nice that I'd killed Getorix. That at least was a little bit of a problem solved, but at this point I didn't feel like I could win, and I felt like he could move in and take out my relatively low armoured Lancers and Stormblades. There's not many Stormblades remaining at all, and that would leave me with nothing left on the to defend on the scenario. So at that point I conceded. It was already pretty late in the game. So yeah, so it was 4 very interesting games, very well played against some very good players. Managed to get 3 losses to 1 win, and the win was only because the opponent ran out of time. So I really learned quite a lot. I really learned a lot about the weaknesses of Storm Lancers, so hopefully this is going to help me up my game with the Storm Lancers in the future. So Storm Lancers have got a brutal charge, but they die surprisingly easily to the answers that your opponent is probably bringing. If you have Storm Lancers, then they've probably got something that can kill Storm Lancers quite easily. I also realised the weaknesses that they've got against Hordes. So yeah, those heavies are the Hordes heavies are really good because they can heal up. Though you really have to kill them dead. Although they're generally a bit lighter armoured, you have to make sure that they're dead. So that was quite interesting. And yeah, I'm still really making a lot of mistakes with peace trades. So quite a lot of my opponents mentioned that I was being very aggressive with my Storm Lancers, but I was getting them in there. But I wasn't doing much damage with some of them, especially when it wasn't on feat turn. And then I didn't have any plan for keeping them alive, so I was basically offering up my Storm Lancers for them to just munch at no real cost to them. So it was quite interesting to learn about that. So I feel like this list is my list is a little bit more complicated to play well than I initially thought. I think I improved a lot as a player because of what I learned here. So yeah, it was a really good tournament. I'm going to tie it up there because I'm almost approaching 45 minutes of solid talking. My voice is going as well. So I hope that was an interesting tournament rep, and hopefully get another game in before the next tournament. Cheers, bye.